I was happy in the haze of a drunken hour, and heaven knows I'm miserable now. I went for a job and I found a job, and heaven knows I'm miserable now. In my life, how do I spend valuable time on people who don't care if I live or die? Hi there, Terence McGuana here, and today we're going to look at A Nightmare on Elm Street from 2010. This was requested by my YouTube buddy Ada at Ada Unleashed, whose channel is a captivating watch. She is such an engaging presenter and features stories about her life and her daily adventures. As before, the link to her amazing channel is in the description and in the comments below, so please connect with this channel. You will not be disappointed, I promise. The plot to this film centres around Hollywood's broken system of taking what was once a highly original concept and turning it into one of the most boring films in recent memory. I first saw Nightmare on Elm Street around about 86, 87 on video cassette, and it blew my socks off. I'd never seen anything quite like it. The movie, it was just so unique in the horror genre with its fantastical ideas and just such an amazing protagonist and antagonist. And when I heard that there was going to be a remake of this film, I just completely rolled my eyes, right? Because the thing about A Nightmare on Elm Street is it's not just about that original film and what an amazing achievement Wes Craven was able to create there, but also the Freddy Krueger character. This character of Freddy Krueger became such a pop culture icon in the late 1980s. I remember there being television shows, there was records, there was posters, there was all sorts of memorabilia associated with a child murderer, right? It's just unbelievable how much of a phenomenon this character was. But when this first arrived in the cinema in 2010, it came out to some terrible reviews. People were really not pleased with this film, so I just ignored it. I just let it pass me by. And as the years have went on, people are constantly reminding me, like, oh, have you never seen A Nightmare on Elm Street from 2010? And I'm like, no, never really had the need to watch it. And when I asked Ada if she would like me to review a film for her, and she said A Nightmare on Elm Street from 2010, I didn't really understand what I was getting myself in for, right? Because I admire Ada and I respect her. She's got a great taste in horror films, right? But when this one came up, I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to actually review this. I've really been having sleepless nights about this review, Ada, and I'm so sorry, but I can't sugarcoat it. I really don't like the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Maybe you've not watched the original Nightmare on Elm Street film before, or some of its sequels. I feel with this movie that to take this character who's appeared in 8 feature films and got more and more ridiculous as each film appeared, where it just the character became more of a sort of silly comic character, to ask us to reboot this character back to being this creepy villain as he was presented in the original is a really tall ask. It's really difficult for me to grasp that Freddy Krueger is a threatening antagonist in this film because of the legacy that Robert Englund has left behind. There are some certain things that separate this version from the original. The CGI makeup effect for Freddy Krueger is for one, and Jackie Earle Haley's performance is vastly different from Robert Englund's performance. And you know, you've got to take your hat off to him here, and I understand that Robert Englund was quite happy with what Jackie Earle Haley had done with this performance as opposed to mimic him, right? But it's just lacking in any sort of tension. Now, I really liked the teenage characters in the original Nightmare on Elm Street. I felt that they were well drawn out characters, especially Nancy Thompson. Nancy Thompson is one of my childhood heroes when I think about it. In preparation for this, I've been watching lots of interviews with Wes Craven, Robert Englund, and I really liked what Robert Englund had to say about the relationship between Freddy Krueger and Nancy Thompson, where this character, he actually said that these two were sort of on the opposite sides of the spectrum from each other, and that Freddy Krueger was almost trying to seduce her in some way. That was why he was so intent in stalking her, was he was challenged by her innocence. One thing that I found that was kind of unnecessary in this was they really do push that Freddy Krueger was a child molester in this film, right? Whereas in the other films, even though that there are signifiers that makes that quite kind of apparent, right, in his behaviour, but they never made that explicitly factual. They really lack imagination in this film. They use a lot of visual cues from the original, right? They use a lot of sort of things that were iconic about the original. One in particular was in the original 1984, we had that moment which always creeped me out, where Nancy's lying in bed and the crucifix falls off the wall behind her, and we can see Freddy Krueger's impression pressing through the wall, right? All in this one shot, this static shot that was just, that just gave me chills. And that was before you actually saw Freddy Krueger appear in this film. Yeah, they revisit that shot and they take it from a different angle, and it just looks so obviously CGI. I don't know how they achieved the shot in the original, right? But it just felt more tangible, it felt more real. Whereas in the CGI one, it just looked like CGI. It just waiting for it was like a cutscene in a video game. But if you've not seen the original Nightmare on Elm Street, would this still work as a horror film? And I can't answer that. I cannot answer whether this film would work. And a lot of the times with remakes of older films, I can block it out sometimes. Sometimes I can go, yeah, well, I can forget about that, but not a Nightmare on Elm Street. Nightmare on Elm Street is one of those films that is tattooed to my mind's eye. There was a period in the 1980s where I actually watched it every day, right? I know, it's probably a bit weird, isn't it? I used to watch Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1 every day, sometimes Part 2 as well, and definitely Part 3. Yeah, those three I would watch on a constant rotation, because they were just so entertaining to me. They were just such brilliant films. If you liked this video, hit the like button. If you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscription button. I'm Terence McGuana. I'll be back with another recommendation. And until then, have a lovely day, okay?